Well, how are you doing in lockdown?
Uh, it's been a little rough. It's been a little rough. Uh, we got Son of Goldfinger was on the road when this all went down, and so every gig that week, no, three gigs out of whatever it was, six got canceled, and the last one didn't get canceled. Firehouse 12 in New Haven, because he said, "Come in and play. We'll just, if you guys don't mind being the guinea pigs, we'll do our first ever live streaming concert, and I think I'm going to do the rest of my. I think I'm going to turn the club into this anyway. I don't think I ever want to do another live gig in there again. But this really, would you guys mind being the guinea pigs?" So we played that last gig, and that was on the night of March 13th, and we knew at that moment, really on Tuesday in Baltimore, Tim and I knew that this thing was just really going to be fucked, because the two university gigs that we had were canceled, and they paid. I canceled the Philly gig because the promoter wasn't going to cancel, even though I knew that Philadelphia was about to get shut down that very night, because I sat down and did my homework, and did the Google homework, and I talked to a couple of very knowledgeable friends like Andre Chumley, and we figured this out. And I just finally, when he didn't cancel the gig, I said, "Listen," he called when we were an hour and 15 minutes from Philly, and said, "Hey, what do you guys think about this gig?" And I'm like, "What? You're calling us now to ask us what we think about the gig? We're an hour and 10 minutes away." And he said, "Yeah, what do you think?" And Tim said, "What do you mean? Are you asking us if we want to cancel?" And he said, "Yeah, I kind of guessed that. Yeah, you guys want to cancel?" And I got really angry, and I pulled the car over, and I said, "Dude, I need like 20 minutes to think about this." He said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, it's shitty in Philadelphia. I don't know why he's not canceling it." And Tim calls him back and says, "Yeah." I said to Tim, "Forget it, man. We're canceling it. We're gonna go. Let's go back to Brooklyn. Let's just chill, make sure our families are okay. Let's just figure this out, because who knows what's going to happen from here." And then we got in the car, and Tim called the promoter and said, "Forget it. We cancel." And he said, "Oh, I guess that's a good idea. We're having a meeting here in 10 minutes for the whole club to cancel everything, close down." And I'm like, "Right. So you couldn't have done this like 2 days ago?"
Well, it was all touch and go around that time,
And he didn't pay, he did not pay.
Yeah.
That was the thing that made me a little upset. I really love this guy, and I just don't know why he didn't just say, "I don't want to pay you if you don't play." You
Yeah.
know, so, I could have said, "Yeah, we're playing the gig," and we show up, and he would have had to have paid us. But it was like put on me in a way. It just didn't feel right, and I know it was a confusing thing for people, especially with money, with the way it is anyway. You
Yeah.
know,
But it feels a little like he's playing chicken with you. So.
it did. I think he was just being. I think he was just being passive. I really love this guy. I really just think he was being passive and didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But you're out there on the road, and you're looking at, wait, how many gigs got canceled? What are we doing out here? How am I going to get home? What's happening?
How are things upstate?
Upstate, it's much better than New York proper, of course. But we had no free hospital beds until uh, none until the beginning of last week, or the middle of last week.
Wow.
There were no free hospital beds
And
here, so
were
you
they all
couldn't.
virus cases?
Yeah, all because of virus cases,
Mhm.
and it's not that bad here. I live in the country,
All right.
so it's as long as we don't go out. but people here are stupid as well. People go out to the store. Some stores are open. People go there. They're not wearing masks. They're not wearing gloves, and then they get aggressive towards you. Like one of my friends, a really fine musician, was kind of threatened by a guy in the post office when she had a mask on and gloves, and he kept pushing forward on the line, like almost bumping into her. And she said, "Please, can you stay back 6 feet at least?" And he called her something like a coward or a pussy or something. And she was like, "What the hell is what?"
It's America. That's what I always tell people. I say, "Oh, you live in the South. You live in the South," and I go, the South is everywhere. You get 30 minutes outside of, you get 30, rednecks are everywhere. You get 30 minutes outside of any big city in America and you'll get the same
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it's true. We don't have that many here, and it was surprising, but there has been this kind of like almost political backlash. It feels like I
Well,
mean, I don't
yeah.
understand it at all, but
Well, it is. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a long discussion that I don't want to get into,
does
but
it
yeah.
have to do with strings or pedals?
No, and thus I don't care about it these days. I'm maintaining my sanity by just dealing with music. That's crazy making enough. And
You,
speaking, yes,
Michael. Speaking of music,
yes.
I am working so much because of the pandemic, and I don't know what it is, but I am working on. I delivered both Tim Burns' record for the Nine Donkeys Splash on May 1st and my own record. I've been working on a 4-record set for Matt Mitchell and Kate Gentile, which is amazing, which is ongoing because it's not going to be released until sometime in 21, probably, maybe late 20. Um, I'm working with one of the Black Mirror composers in England on a record date. I'm doing another Stephen Talon record here. I'm mixing Vijay's record, and we'll see how that goes. It's definitely a testing kind of thing. What else am I mixing? I think I've got 4 more records to do for Nine Donkeys before that have to be done within 6 weeks.
And what is the Nine Donkeys thing?
That is the subset of Screw Gun that is Tim Byrne and me deciding to put things on Bandcamp and not print CDs instead of waiting for a label or whatever.
Right.
So basically Tim decided he wanted to expand Screw Gun. The rollout was my record and his record together. I mixed both of them, and in his case, it was a kind of a mixy mastering job. But that's become pretty common these days. Sometimes I get 2 tracks from people and they want something more than a simple mastering. They want the sound to really change. So
That's interesting. Are you so? Is this is going to be a new subset of the label? Is that why you decided to put out this record?
yeah. It was triggered. I don't know, like 6-8 months ago, a year ago, I kept saying to Tim, you should do a solo record. I really think you should do a solo record. You've never done a solo record. Why don't you do one? And I just was like, every once in a while I would say it. And then because of the pandemic, he decided to start recording himself. So, we talked about how to do that and what to do. And then he got all jazzed about it and said, how much material do you have you haven't released? And I said, I don't know, maybe like somewhere between like 70 and 100,000 pieces. And he said, finished? And I said, yeah, finished, mixed. He goes, good. These solo guitar things, you have more of those? And I said, yeah, I got at least 70 of those, minimum. And the thing is, I keep making them, so it's not all like archival material. So he got excited and said, "Fucking man, let's do this thing. Let's do it. Let's call it Nine Donkeys. We'll get a logo. We'll distribute it through the Screw Gun thing, but it'll just be Bandcamp for now because it's the pandemic and you don't want to be printing CDs anyway. And none of us wants to spend money because everything is canceled except for, ongoing studio work. Especially, I mean, I feel really lucky that I have this stupid little room because I can do so much here that's effective that, whatever. So that's how it started. And now Tim has picked the next 4, I think. I think I'm working on 3 or 4. But as of yesterday, we found the original Son of Goldfinger tracks that were recorded incredibly well. That go back to, it was 2010. And I thought that the mixes were really bad. The guy still had the mixes, so he just reprinted them. And according to Tim, they're really great. I said, I'll believe it when I hear it, but he it's very, very unusual for me to be doubtful about live material, but in this case, I had bad feelings about it when the first time I heard it 10 years ago.
So these were live gigs that you recorded?
The single live gig, it was the first gig that we ever played. First time Chess and I ever played together. Probably the third time Tim had played with Chess, So I flew back from California where I was working at the time on Everything Must Go, the Will Ferrell film. I flew back just for the gig in Brooklyn, spent like every, whatever it cost me to fly back with some of my gear, play the gig, and fly back to California to finish working.
Was that at that coffee shop in Brooklyn?
No, it was at a place called Littlefields. It's like in Gowanus somewhere or South Slope, maybe South Slope, but I can't remember where it is. It's not that far from South Slope Hood in any case, but man, it was a bizarre gig.
So these tracks on the record, are they related in any way to those fuzz demos you've been doing on Instagram? I mean, did any of them grow out of that, or?
Well, those things aren't really, they were never intended to be actual demos. And in a way, they're not really demos because there are people who demo things and they're professional demoers, right? I sit down and if I like a fuzz, and this was the practice, and this is why I have so many with fuzzes, is that I'd get a fuzz and I'd go, I should probably see how this sounds outside of me playing it. So I started, recording to the iPad. Later on, a couple years into it, 4 years into it, I started using a real mic and a real mic pre. Every once in a while, I revert to the stupid iPad because, if you're going to put it into, I tend to take the whole thing. I don't really doctor anything, but I do mix the sound like I would anything,
Right.
Takes me I do it really fast. Maybe it takes me, less than an hour to mix an 8 or 15-minute track. And there are always all these little bits and bobs in the video ones. There are all these little bits and bobs where I played for 3 minutes and I go, okay, grab a minute, mix that, which is what I did yesterday with the pig pile. I don't know if you heard that one.
Yeah, I started to listen to that. That's, but some of these turned into tracks for the record.
Absolutely, John Lyons for Basic Audio once upon a time asked if he could use. I used to do like 8, 13, 14-minute long pieces, and I'd put them up on SoundCloud. And John Lyons said, "Can I make a video for that?" I went, "Sure, okay." And that I think that was very fruitful, definitely fruitful for him and good for me and I have a lot of those that never got turned into anything, or I never even put on SoundCloud. And oh man, I can't believe I didn't send you this Bruno Latour piece. Shit.
I think
Can
you
I
meant.
send you a piece while we're talking?
Well, you can
Or,
send it. Yeah,
or,
I'm not gonna want to listen to it in the middle of the interview.
or sure, I'll wait until after we're
Yeah,
done.
wait. I mean, you can send it after. Now, you said you didn't. That these were all live, pretty much one take things. No
They
overdubs.
are. No
Did you do
overdubs.
any editing on them?
Sometimes I edit, if you can't edit video, number one. I don't edit video.
Right.
So there's that. Anything that's got video there's no editing. The things that might get edited are when I play for 25 minutes and I decide, okay, I only really want to hear 11 minutes of this. And I might take entire sections and just cut them out. But there's no reordering or anything like that. And there's no overdubbing. That's just like classical music editing,
Right.
or wait, I mean, that's like any live performer's typical kind of editing in the studio.
Right.
And that's what I do if I want to do it. But take a 20-minute piece and turn it into a 9-minute piece, sure, absolutely. Walk away when a loop is going, that for 5 minutes, and you need to go out and pee or have something to drink, but you don't want to stop, then definitely edit.
Yeah. So
Don't stop.
so
Don't
some of
stop.
these pieces on the record might have been longer, but you would have shortened them.
They might have been. I think the only ones there might be. There might be what two of them that would have been longer. It's possible that no, Bury That Clock is definitely not cut. I can't remember. I won't be able to remember, but I
Yeah.
remember I definitely didn't do that one, and I didn't do either of the clean pieces. That's got no edits in it, and those are
Right.
no overdubs on any of that stuff. That's the idea. Is I'm doing this because I don't even have my full rig set up. I just have some pedals between anywhere from 2 to 5 pedals. That's it.
Right.
No volume pedal, none of that, just guitar, those pedals, usually on a stand in front of me. Um, Not all of them on the floor, like reverb and delays are always on a stand in front of me so I can manipulate them. And there sometimes, if mood is in use or blooper, if either of those are in use, I have expression pedals on the floor for them. Um, but in general, like something like the waltz, there's a reverb and there's that delay, and no fuzz, nothing. That's it.
Um, so what are the expression pedals controlling on the mood and the blooper?
On the mood, it's controlling. What do I have it usually controlling? Hold on a second. I'm going to move. I have to look at the names of these parameters. Um,
Well, you can just
oh,
sonically, what does it do? In other words,
on mood, I have so many like technological things to do that I have to look at something to get my head together. Mostly, I'm manipulating the clock on mood, the clock speed,
right.
something that I really enjoy doing, and sometimes I'll twiddle a knob, and that knob might end up also on the same expression pedal. I might twiddle like the time knob of a delay or a pitch shifted delay that's in the left side, and sometimes I'll mix that with the clock. With blooper, I tend to use I have a foot switch to go in and out of recording, and instead of using my hand, and I've got one expression pedal. I've got one expression pedal that functionally shifts whatever the what do they call them? They have a word for the modifiers. I'll have at least one modifier on the expression pedal, sometimes two. Both of them will be on the expression pedal doing different things. But I don't believe that there's any blooper in any of the ones that went on this record. There is Mood. Mood is on Outsider. Mood is on something else. I think Mood might only be on Outsider.
And what's the audio result of messing with the clock speed? What?
Oh, the clock speed. It basically is changing. It's basically changing the sample rate. So you get, depending on how you set up the range of the expression pedal, you have a huge range of changing both the pitch and the speed at the same time, and the quality of the audio, including very, very degraded at the bottom of the throw of the clock. Oh. When you lower the sampling rate to 8K or 6K, and when you start something at 32K or something like that, 44K, 32K, and you sample it there, and then you drop it down to 6, you add tons of noise and grit, and you actually create, you can hear the grains in the audio. You actually can hear the granularity of the audio, if you can hear through the hissy noise that's created. But keeping the clock in motion means that you can do things like, if I record at a very low sample rate, I can have a low quality and then move the mood up to a higher quality, but that lower quality sound still sounds lower quality. All that noise and grain that I recorded down there sounds that shitty, but then I can record other more pristine things when the clock rate is at something more normal, which is like 44K. And all this comes from, having worked with PCM encoded digital delays for my entire life, my entire adult life. Lexicon PCM 42 does that very thing, albeit you can change the clock speed on the PCM 42 continuously, whereas Mood changes the clock speed in steps of sample rates.
Right.
The PCM 42 had all kinds of anti-aliasing devices built into it to stop the degrading of the tone, so that you can then move smoothly from one octave to another, just like in a complete words.
Well, more like a whammy pedal or
Yeah, more like that, except you're changing the time amount as well as shifting the pitch at the same time.
Right. So
yeah.
Yeah. So were you not using the PCM stuff on these at all?
Actually, not on this set, but there are at least there have to be 40 of them where I decided that it was okay to use my PCM 42 as long as I didn't take out my rack and my pedal board. So I just set the PCM 42 on top of an amp next to the amp that I'm playing through, and walk over to it and manipulate it. And I did have the expression pedals for it, but I was doing everything else with it by hand,
So other than that, we're using your what kind of rig were you using? Were you using the same guitar for most of this stuff, or switching guitars?
The newer stuff, I really play the Ronin. They call it a Morningstar. I call it a Superstar. But that kind of beige. This guitar here, I'll show you. Here it comes. I swear.
This is why I wanted to do video.
It's plugged in. I have been tending to use this.
Right.
Really a lot. I'm very It's very different. The pickups are very different than the pink guitar, the pink Ronin.
Right, with
Um,
the big
they're,
pickups.
they're equally great. These lean towards Stratocaster, but they still carry some of that some of the good '67 DeArmond gold foil vibe to them. And I love the neck on this guitar. It's
Are they
just
single coils? Do they hum or are they hum canceling?
these are both hum. These are all three hum canceling,
Wow.
and they're not they're not the best hum cancelers for a guy who uses a lot of high gain pedals,
Yeah.
but it's good enough, really good enough, and they sound fantastic. And it's also got the magic button in it thing that
Right.
I showed you once at NAMM. That
Yeah, and
that
I think we discussed this when we did the last interview
yeah,
for your last record. Were you
yeah,
using the Fryette through the? Were you using like actual amp with mics and everything?
yeah. So it it really bounces back and forth a lot. But recently, I've been using the Fryette Ether mostly.
Right.
I I've been bouncing back and forth for the last year and change between the Fryette Ether and the pretty much the Sound City 50 watt Sound City
Right.
with but I've been playing it in here through that same Alnico speaker that's in the Ether cabinet because it's just containable in the room. And really, so it's me pedals in delay and reverb in the effects loop of the Fryette power station that the whatever amplifier I'm playing goes through before it
Right.
gets to the. Yep.
Yeah. Are you on but not remote the first tune? It sounds like you're bringing in a reverb with. Are you bringing it in with an expression pedal because it kind of fades in and out?
Uh, I don't know. I'd have to
Uh,
listen to
uh,
that, but I don't. If I'm changing a reverb time, it could be the compression of recording actually bringing it up, like you hear when people make bad recordings on their iPads, and 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 they stop talking, and as soon as they stop talking, the reverb in the room kind of explodes. Did you ever
right.
notice
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah. No, I've heard that.
It could be that. It could be that effect. It could just be that the reverb. It could be some amount of that compression, but I don't think I've been doing that with reverbs. I do sometimes change the reverb time while I'm playing.
Right.
I mean, I've always done that. So
But we
I,
do.
I might go from nothing to 25 seconds, or from 6 seconds to 60. That's classic.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
it sounds like. Are you doing it with an expression pedal, or are you walking over to the amp and just turning it on the PCM? Or
I have to think about that specific track, and I'm not really clear about what I recorded that with. I can look it
okay,
up, but I don't know.
it's okay. Yeah. So in general, I was curious. Do you remember which? There's a lot of great fuzz tones. Do you remember which fuzz is used, either on which track or just in general?
Yeah, yeah, I can if you I can look those up pretty quickly. But I can tell. I mean, bury that stupid clock is a oh man. Uh, yeah, hang on one second. Bury that stupid clock is oh man, what is this thing called? It's a really cool brown fuzz. It's not in the room. So hang on a sec. Can you handle my seeing my back?
Sure. I may or may not edit this.
Yeah, okay, I'll keep talking and then you can
Well,
decide.
while you're looking, were you playing behind the bridge or the nut on that? Like the loop that starts that sounds like the tones of playing behind a bridge or behind the nut. It has that
I
kind of chimey thing going on.
probably in a second. Yeah, that's exactly it. I looped that on a revolver.
Okay, yeah, that's what it sounds like, and it sounds like you reverse it at some point.
I'm going to tell you what that fuzz was. It's barely fuzzy, that one, right?
Yeah, that I mean that one's I don't recall that being heavily fuzzed. Suede,
That's a
yeah,
Suede is a basic audio. I'm losing my ability to remember every word in the dictionary today.
you and me
It's the
both.
one that's always on my board, the yellow one, the basic audio by bias,
Right.
and it's a silicon fuzz.
Okay.
It's a dual biased. There are two bias controls and a tone control and a volume control on it.
It
It
sounds like
is.
there's some tremolo on Suede. I was wondering if that's actual tremolo or if it's just beats that are coming from the notes you're playing.
Oh, you're clever. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It is one of the reasons I love the by bias
Yeah.
because if you get the bias to be in exactly the dead center, to be unstable at a point in time where a sustaining note starts to lose its starts to lose the ability to drive the fuzz, it moves into that tremolo. And what I do is I learned a technique to keep it going is to go with it by continuously moving the whammy bar like I'm constantly
Right.
going like this, and I
Right.
do it pretty quickly and pretty far like that, and it keeps the sound going. And I love those kinds of like, okay, that's something that only happens when you're paying attention and you decide you're going to make something out of every piece of the sound that you're manipulating, everything about it. So the first time it happened to me, I was like, dude, okay, I got to keep this going somehow. So yeah, that's good. Well spotted, Michael.
Well, speaking of that kind of thing, like on Lone Rider, it sounds like that Antichthon.
Antixon?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the one you used on that record, that tune, but it has those kind of also those kind of tremolo things that
I
happen.
believe that's the same fuzz.
It
I
is the
could be
same.
wrong. It is. Could be. Hold on. That's an easy one to look up. Uh, uh, yeah,
I figured you would have this stuff documented.
I do, and it's a question of I didn't take it out
Uh,
because
that's okay. I
because
probably should have.
sometimes I'm an idiot.
I should have asked you to in advance. I didn't prepare properly either.
That's because we're real professionals, Michael.
It's
Hold on one second. Oh man, come on.
or you can actually put the tune on.
No, but yes.
That I would do. I don't know if I can do that. I'm not familiar enough with Skype to know if I could do that and you would hear it. Otherwise, I would just play it.
There is a way to do it. Okay. Oh hell, I really have to look it up.
Well, don't worry about it. We
I'm,
can
I'm
talk about.
useless now.
No, don't
Okay.
worry about
Pause. Pause for old guy.
it. Oh man, no, please. I can't remember anything anymore. Um,
It's it's called cognitive impairment.
well, my mother, my sainted mother, at one point she was calling it CRS. Can't remember shit. But then as she got older, she's turned it into craft. Can't remember a fucking thing. That was. And this is from a woman. I don't think I ever heard her swear the entire time I grew
I
up.
I, in her honor, I'm going to use craft from now on.
I use it all the time now. On Outsider, there sounds like a low octave comes in about halfway through. Was that a fuzz that gives you kind of a lower octave? Or do you,
No, it would have been I am pushing the whammy bar down an
oh,
octave.
okay.
I have there are examples of me practicing those techniques on Instagram. Uh, playing scales, going downward scales with and some upward ones, but mostly the downward ones with the whammy bar, getting my octaves tight so I can get, I can definitely get it. I can definitely hit I can hit, I can pretty much hit the E below E
I'm trying to
with the
remember.
low
I think I remember hearing notes being played above it as well, though. That's why I was wondering if it was,
above.
well, above the octave, that there were notes
Uh,
playing above it
okay,
along.
there is one thing that you might be talking about if we hold on a second. This thing going weird with my phone here. My iPad was ringing.
Uh, I guess that's why it froze for a second.
Yeah, did it freeze? I got to turn my phone off. That's the
Just for
thing.
a second.
Yeah, it stops the iPad. All right. Right. It could be the perk fuzz because you can get tones from it, and you can hear it right in the beginning of the track where I'm hitting a note and then it jumps down to another note.
Uh,
That fuzz, that messed up version of a harmonic percolator, um, allows for side banding of notes. There's some kind of self oscillation in the circuit, and when the bias and the gain and the input come to a certain point in time, it will generate a secondary tone. And sometimes it's part of the original tone, and sometimes it just switches over to it. And I think that's one of the classic oscillating fuzz events. I never saw it before in a harmonic percolator until John made that perk. Maybe it existed in that design before, but I never heard anybody play with it in there. But you can do that with almost all of the trombetta, many of the trombetta bone
sure. Yeah.
family. That's the idea, that Jordan Boss tone thing. That there is that self oscillation that allows you to get to those kinds of lower notes, side bands or difference tones.
Right. Who makes the perk?
The perk is Basic Audio, also John
Okay.
Lyon in West Virginia, close to you.
Yeah. Oh, there's a bunch of pedal guys down here.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so what do you look for in a fuzz? What makes you like a fuzz?
I think there's the whole idea of like having to get into a fuzz to look for the danger and stability points is really appealing to me. Anything that's additive in a fuzz that isn't like I'm trying to sound like your amplifier. Any fuzz that's trying to sound like my amplifier, I generally don't care about because my amplifiers sound great and I can get tones like that I like from it. So I ended up not being a huge fan of most fuzz faces. But I am a huge fan of things that are strange, that add something to the texture of the instrument. Anything that is based on the old Maestro fuzzes and its spawn, the Jordans, the Tone Bender family, especially the beginning of the Tone Bender family, which was a sort of I believe was an outgrowth of a Maestro fuzz pedal.
Yeah.
It was heavily influenced by it. Those are additive. I expect some kind of danger from them, and that sonically, musically, and that interests me as a new textural effects, whether it's for chordal stuff where you're creating difference tones within chords, or just a funny texture, something that you wouldn't get from an amp, too gritty, too granular, maybe not necessarily fuzzy all the way. Slight difference tones like you get in the Ampeg Scrambler series of,
Yeah.
it's like a really bad octave pedal because it never hits the right note. Right. I mean, and on that same note, it's not just fuzz for me that does that. So that piece, the waltz piece that I mentioned, which is number 7 in the list, which is
Yeah.
called
Someday find a waltz.
waltz, that's one delay pedal and one reverb and a clean guitar, cleanish. And the delay pedal was a pedal that Nick Harris designed and finished, and then he died. He was the owner and founder of Cattle and Bread Pedals.
Oh yeah.
He finished it himself. He died. They released it. I got one right away, and it is a frequency shifting delay pedal, not a ring mod, but a frequency shifter, which is really a pretty different sound than ring mod. If you're familiar with like Balinese, Javanese music, gamelan music, frequency shifters, frequency shifting delays, frequency shifters create tones that are more rich in bell tones, kind of like gamelan instruments. A frequency shifted delay is capable of changing those tones with every given repeat. So that's what that is. It's just a delay pedal and a big reverb pedal, the Neunauber, my regular Neunauber delay reverb pedal, and that's it. That's what's on there.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you what the ring modulator was on that, but it
Yeah.
is, yeah. And it's interesting. You can really tell a good way to, if anybody has Ableton Live, they have their frequency shifter. You can switch between ring modulator and frequency shifter, and you can hear the difference. I mean,
Right. So if you do that,
total difference.
if you do that process within a delay that has feedback, you create those either dropping or rising tones.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
How do you balance the thing between? I mean, you are a master of getting these pedals that make these fuzzes that make these odd sounds, but then mastering how to control that and create music with it. So how do you feel about the balance between that and the danger of stuff coming up that you can't control and that you have to react to?
Well, I don't know. Electric guitar is the paradigm of electric guitar seems to have that kind of little bit of danger in it, no matter what, because you're playing an instrument that's too loud, right? Unless you're playing really softly all the time, which is a different thing. But if you're playing medium volumes, you're loud, right?
So people have told me.
Right.
So sound men have told me.
And the whole idea of amp distortion and all that stuff, everything within those subsets of the paradigm of electric guitar, it just doesn't feel any different to me than all that stuff. There's just another, and it just feels like, okay, so you do a little work to get there. How do I get a balance that lets me, and that's what that piece was about. I was learning to control it. I had it for 2 hours, and I was going, well, this is great, and this is great. And then I hit a tone, and I really liked what was happening, and I went, okay, what happens if I do this, turn this knob? And then I hit that tone again, and it wasn't there. So I spent another hour finding that tone, looked at the key center, and went, right, now just play a tune. Just make up a tune. Try to do something with this.
You're talking about the Caitlin Bread, the frequency shifter.
Yeah, exactly. Bicycle delay. It's called. It's right here.
That's right. I know that.
Right here. This guy.
Yeah, I remember when that came out at NAMM. It was pretty exciting. It sounded great.
It's so beautiful, and it's so simple, and it's beautiful. And Nick wrote, he wrote a really nice thing that they have about the pedal that's on their website, in which he sounds like, he's lost in a psychedelic motif. But in fact, everything that he says about, don't learn too much about it. Just play with the knobs, react to it, respond with it. And that what he says in that little piece that he wrote on his page is precisely how I look at everything that gets attached to my guitar, including the amplifier, and in my case, the things that are on the guitar itself. I work so hard on, on my vibrato and my pitch with the bar, and and pedals come in, and I learned this. A pedal comes in, and you go, and I turn it on, and I go, I don't like this at all. Okay, but what happens if I do this? And what happens if I do this? And what happens? And I can go through a fuzz pedal in, it's got to be really super deep for it to take more than an hour of like finding like little cracks and crevices where some unbelievable crap exists, And then of course there's a that becomes a kind of a methodology, so that the next fuzz, I know then suddenly I knew, okay, the volume control on my guitar, the tone controls on my guitar, these affect certain fuzzes like this. So that's a thing to test within a 5 days or a week of this idea of checking out fuzzes for real for the first time, whatever it was. And I don't remember, 2007, 2008, something like that. Just going in, finding that, it meant that I knew the next time somebody sent me a fuzz, if I wasn't getting a good sound, what happens if I turn my volume control down? What happens if I use a guitar that doesn't have treble bleed cap on it? What happens with my tone control? What happens with pickup changes? And sometimes you find one sound that's unbelievable, and I'm going to use it again, and I'm going to get right to it. I think I don't know, this idea of just like looking at it instead of just letting it sit there is important. Sometimes I get overwhelmed because I try to learn too many things about too many pedals, and for that reason, half the time that I play in my studio anymore, I just don't plug into a fuzz at all, just because. Okay, somebody sent me a Spaceman pedal, right? Right before I got the Pig Pile, which is an incredible piece of work, I have to say. I have two almost unknown fuzzes, at least unknown in the people I talk to. This one, the Pig Pile by Electro Foods, and the Mask Audio Electronics / EAE Eldritch Blast. These fuzzes are so deep that I could just live inside of them doing a million different kinds of sounds forever. That and a good Tone Bender Mark I. And really, I can sit here for hours going, oh, what happens if I do this? What happens if I play the old Russian Borisova pickups into this?
What do you keep your amp slightly broken up when you're using a fuzz, or do you go into it completely clean?
Lately I've got on the ether. In my room here, I really only have a little bit of breakup, but it definitely breaks up, but it cleans up very fast and almost at the same volume. And I've disabled negative feedback on that amp since we're totally in geek mode. Quite a few years ago, I just disabled all negative feedback. I found a spot in the switch where it was not there's a normal mode for the negative feedback switch, and there's a bold mode for the negative feedback switch, which is less negative feedback in the circuit. And then I found a spot in the middle where it just gets disabled.
It's like the old putting the 3-position strat switch in the middle.
It's exactly that. It's a 3-position thing. One day I just kind of I was moving the switch while I was playing a note, and it got stuck for a second, and then it stopped, and it was just it was like 7 dB louder, 8 dB louder. I was like, what the fuck was that? And then I went back and fixed it and went, right, this is the way this amp is going to live from now on. And it's pretty much been that way, unless I have to play something super, super clean that doesn't open up the top end,
Right.
and doesn't open up the bottom end. And then I put negative feedback back on, you know.
There was I don't know if it was the first tune. No, it was. Oh yes, on Suede, you're playing with feedback on that, which made me wonder how loud do you play in the room and how loud do you have to play to get the kind of feedback when you want it?
Well, I am using a power station, so I do, and I am pushing the amp. Okay, the amp's a little bit of crunch, not a lot, but it's definitely there. And I am pushing the input of it usually with a fuzz. Different fuzzes, different amounts. Some fuzzes don't work so great that way, and some do. And so with the power station, knocking down the power of this very loud little supposedly 22 watt amp. It's no way it's 22 watts. It's like 30 or something, 32 real watts. It's a loud amp. So I'm knocking it back, and I wouldn't say that I'm playing super quietly most of the time. It's definitely enough to get feedback in the room with the fuzz box,
Yeah.
depending on where I'm standing, sitting.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem. I found that a lot of times it has more to do with the frequencies that are being put out by whether it's the guitar, the amp, the fuzz or whatever, and how that reacts with the amp than the volume. I mean, there's certain amps and guitar setups where you can get feedback at really relatively low volume just because.
Yeah, yeah, I do think that this amp the amp itself is kind of like that, and it's made more intense by the fact that I've defeated the negative feedback in the power amp. It is like that. I can play relatively cleanly and get a good nice feedback. I know my guitars and I know the pickups, and I know in general you can find your position to be in pretty quickly if you're sensitive to the room. Just move into it and you'll find that note. And it's almost always the same. Each guitar and pickup set has its own, like you're saying. They're going to have their own specific groups of notes that are going to get held really well. My pink guitar, your E on the B string, your F sharp on the B string is my E because I detuned by a whole step, and that E on actually both of my Ronin guitars is always like it always speaks very quickly with any fuzz, no matter how much gain is on it. It'll speak immediately. But it's also, I think it's important for me. Like feedback is always it's always important for me that I validate it, and my validation of it is because I like it, because it's a surprise, it's something to interact with. My validation of it is to manipulate it however I can.
Yeah.
That's where I like to be.
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the fuzzes. Also, there's that line between being able to control them and then the stuff that's going to come out of them that you at that point can't control, but that's going to make you react and play to them. I guess
I think my life is littered. My musical life is littered with these things. So, and I have safety nets for myself. I do have safety nets. Like, for example, on stage, I'm much more likely to go. I just go straight for the danger. I mean, but I have a safety net. For example, feedback. It's getting out of hand. I know how to stop it. I can find 10 different ways to stop it, and the most obvious one being muting the strings and stop facing the amplifier or move out of your position. And the second most obvious one is I've always got in like a typical stage and recording environment, I always have a volume pedal at the end of my pedal chain. So right there, boom, just hit the volume pedal. Either fade it out if you want to be musical about it, or just hit the bottom of it and get rid of it before you really can't control it. And the other thing is, like in the looping stuff, I have everything on a mixer. So when I bring something in and I don't know what it's going to do, I have no idea what I recorded, can't remember. Here it comes. And if it sucks, I have 80 ways to change it or dump it, right?
Right.
Same thing with the feedback, same thing with fuzz boxes. I think it's a motif. I like those things. It keeps me engaged. It makes me stop thinking, oh, I got to be a good guitar player,
Well, the thing is that kind of leads into my next question, because you are a good guitar player, and your improvisation, your melodic improvisation, sounds to me more like it's based on intervals than on scales or modes or anything like that. And I was wondering how you feel about that. It's how.
Oh, that's true. It is that, because what do you do when you sing a melody? You're singing intervals. You're not singing scales, right? But the other side of that, I think the thing that's behind it, I think the thing that allows me to feel good in that melodic environment is that really what I'm doing all the time is looking at ways of using a melody to imply harmony. That's really where I'm at, right? So, I very rarely, like scalarly, right? If you're thinking scalarly, you are thinking often about staying inside of a harmonic structure, right? I guess like the jazz guys say, inside, outside,
Right.
or whatever. I'm thinking if I'm playing a melody, I am creating an expansion of what I think of as like harmonic changes. Right? So when somebody plays the bad note, if I play the bad note, I immediately hear the next chord, even if it's not playing, even if somebody else is playing another chord. That's how I hear it. So I'm trying to shift harmony around with those intervals. I guess that's kind of how I look at it. And Ken Rosser, the great guitar teacher in Southern California, my friend, he points out that even when I'm writing on the guitar, I'm using voice leading, right? So melody is the primary thing, but the melody makes the harmony move, right? Yeah. I'm constantly voice leading into new harmonic areas, and he just popped it out of his mouth one day. He was giving me a lesson, right hand technique lesson, and I just fiddled some bullshit on the instrument. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I love that voice leading thing that you always do." I went, "What?" I never, analyzed my playing, so. He goes, "Oh yeah, and I went, "Oh, right." I do that.
Voice
do
leading.
I do that? Is that me?
Yeah. Well, the easiest way to imply chords is what most people do is just play arpeggios of the chords.
Yeah.
But it feels to me like when you're I don't know, when I listen to you play, it feels like you're playing notes and you're kind of listening for what the next note should be, in your head, and then go there, in a way that a lot of guitar players don't. I never really feel like you're playing any kind of preconceived patterns or any kind of preconceived.
They're as preconceived as anybody else's muscle memory stuff is the same for me. I think it's the same for a lot of us, right? I have muscle memory for how to do, playing scalarly, how to play intervallically scalarly, how to move in the symmetrical modes, muscle memory things, practicing things. But but you know, like I remember very clearly thinking about scales when I was young, when I was learning them, when I was especially when I was with when I was taking lessons with Abercrombie. You know, I was really focused on getting inside of chords, and in order to do that, John said, "Okay, so every scale, every mode of that scale, starting on any note, up and down, bottom string, bottom two strings, middle two strings, next two strings, skip strings, every way, which way you can do that. Just get all that down, get that muscle memory, know where all the notes are." And so I remember I listened to it like that, you know, that the synthesizer thing that Andy and I put out a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I think you got a copy of that.
Yeah, it's great.
You know, I hear me as a kid creating almost everything out of scales instead of, you know, playing the heart thought, you know,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to put that.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, that's how I would put exactly how it sounds to me that you're doing it now. I mean, you know the old expression. Everybody says somebody different said it, but you know, learn all your modes and your scales and all your stuff, and then forget them and just play. And you know, when you play,
But
you're one of the few people. It sounds like you actually forgot them and you're just playing.
I do, in fact, believe that even muscle memory wise, there are certain things that when I'm reading something, I notice myself struggling with playing. Arpeggio is no problem, but typically like linear scalar, linear practice stuff, I'm like tripping on that stuff because I and it makes me I have to do it. You know, if I'm playing something, oh man. It was this piece that my friend Bruno, the French composer Bruno Latour, wrote, and for the opening of the brand new train station / train museum in Brussels. Big piece, big orchestra and stuff. And he wrote this impossible stuff to read, and it wasn't really impossible. It was most of it was really super linear. It was at high speed, and it was so scalar and so you can't call those scales aren't symmetrical, but you know, those patterns are so what they are on the instrument for me. But I was tripping all over them. I was like, dude, can we slow the tape down?
Well, is it because it's because it's been so long since you've played like that? Is
I think so. Yeah, I think it's that. It's a weakness. You know, I kind of when people talk about this thing, learn all this stuff and then forget about it. I do believe that physically and mentally, I don't remember the names of the modes. I don't know the names of any scales anymore. I just don't know them.
uh,
Oh, even any scales, even the Messian symmetrical scales. I have no idea. Is that one? Was that five? No, I think I mixed 3 and 5. I don't know.
well, you
You
haven't
know?
been. I mean, the thing is, you haven't been dealing with that theory in a long time. You know, I mean, you learned it back in the day, I assume, but you know, once you've developed into your own style, unless you're teaching people all the time,
Yeah,
I
I'm
could
not.
certainly see how you wouldn't remember that stuff because you know the actual names and all that stuff is not important. What's important is that you've got the sounds in your head, you've got the things under your fingers when you need it and you can do it. I mean, it's the
Yeah,
people who remember all that stuff are the people who are, you know, have students and are teaching in that way. It's so funny. I mean, I took one lesson with John Abercrombie and he told me the
yeah,
exact same thing.
yeah. Did you go at it with him? It was
No,
amazing.
I took the one lesson and at the time I was not, you know, that into studying and he wasn't that into teaching but it was great. I just loved him and I loved his playing
Yeah,
and you know,
that was also that was a great hang too. I think we had maybe like 4 or 5 lessons over the course of a year and a couple of months, and then he basically told me to fuck off. You know,
but
but it
the,
was great because I'd be hanging around and invariably he'd be giving a lesson. You know how relaxed he was
Yeah.
in those days for John, and he would, and Al Foster would show up. I'd be like, dude, I'm I'm in the room with Abercrombie and Al Foster. What the hell? Byrack would show up, right?
Was this when he had the loft downtown
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah?
On Eighth, I think it was on
I
Eighth
can't
Avenue,
I can't remember. I just remember he had
Eighth
a
and
loft.
20th or something like
That
that.
sounds
Eighth and
right.
yeah, yeah, it was cool. I worked hard at that stuff though. I took it very seriously because he said you got to learn this stuff. You want to shred harmony. You want to be it. You have to have the whole instrument. You can't leave a corner unknown. It has to. You just have to know it.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, you got to know where you are. And he was spot on, and he was a great guy. It was great to have him as a teacher.
Yeah, he was a
We
great guy.
both know a lot of people who enjoyed his company immensely as a teacher. He was just so cool.
He was also another one of those guys who he obviously knew all that stuff, but he forgot it also. I mean, he was the most, for me, he was the most swinging guitar player I've ever heard. His sense of swing was unrivaled among guitarists.
Yeah, super. Really, really, he had that. It all flowed in his phrasing. He had that swing that was generally behind the beat, always dragging back off the back of it, and then he'd catch up on it, and then he'd put something on top just for a zinger. And I think it was all extremely, it was what he made of his own playing. You know what I mean? It's not something that is, Ken and I used to have this argument with younger players on the gear page about, there's natural talent and then there's what you make of yourself, right? And I think John really, he had that blend of things that was, he found a way to make his own voice out of the slew of amazing guitar players that preceded him and were around while he was alive. That is really, it was an incredible kind of person to be around, to know that they were really doing their own thing. He loved McLaughlin, and you could hear it, but it didn't last for but oh, right. And then boom, you're back in John land,
No, I know. It's fascinating. Do you know that record that he did with Schofield? There was
which one? Yeah.
I think they just did one record together. I remember back in the day, and they actually did a gig on Bleecker Street once, and I got to see them do it together. But at that time, the two of them on that record sounded more like each other than they ever would again. We're talking back maybe late 70s, early 80s. And on that record, they both branched off into completely different styles, and very singular personal styles. And, John just became about that swinging flow that he had. That was just
amazing. Really amazing. No, I know that I did hear him before I heard him play with Lookout Farm. But when I heard him play with Lookout Farm, I just went, whoa, that's it. That guy he's onto a thing. Yeah. Like what? I thought to myself, from what zone? He's not coming from a single zone ever. And that's what I think made me think that he just found a way to just be his own dude, be his own man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to Brandon Ross, who's up on. I'm shouting out to Brandon Ross, who's up on my texts in front of me. Right?
So are there plans? Do you plan to release more of these solo pieces?
There are so many of them, and there's also some other kinds of music there's so much of that this was it was partially triggered by the pandemic, and the recording industry is now in a state of pause. For me, it's in a real state of pause because doing something with my record company, ECM, is a process that takes, get the record going, they get their team in place. They tell you the date. It's almost always a year later or 8 months later or a year and a half later. All of that has been stymied by the pandemic. All of it. The building of CDs, the communication to get it to occur, the studio recordings, the distribution networks, the buyers, because no one has any money, unless you were okay before, like very okay before the pandemic. Most people are suffering, and it's most people who buy records. I mean, most regular folks. So, it just seemed like the right thing to do to just start going with it, and it's not bad. We didn't do badly we're still not doing badly. This is not a bad thing. I would prefer to have something physical, and maybe when this pandemic is done, I'll revert to that as well. But I don't know.
Well, the thing is, I mean, the future is, I mean, the
No,
reality is nobody's got a CD player in their car anymore. Nobody's got a CD player in their computer anymore. Unless you actually go out and buy a CD player, you can't buy CD.
No, I know it's a throwback thing. I like the artwork,
Yeah. Oh, so do I. That's the thing I miss the most about it, and the credits. And I mean, that's the problem with streaming. And that's one good thing about Bandcamp is, usually when people post stuff on Bandcamp, they post the credits, including, the studio, the engineer, all the stuff that you used to get in credits, whereas if you buy stuff on iTunes or stream it, or from Amazon as a download, you don't get any of that stuff.
None of it, yeah.
And that
unless it's embedded as data somewhere, but you don't see it on the screen, right?
Yeah, mostly it isn't, and all music has gone down the tubes years ago. You can't even look it up anymore. So, I mean, Bandcamp, it seems to be doing great. And I just read they made $11 million for their artists over the weekend when they were, pushing that thing, which is great. So I'm glad to hear you're doing good. And I hope it.
I was surprised, especially. I can't say I was nervous about this, but it's not my brand, and I don't have a Bandcamp site, so I was partially under the impression that maybe people wouldn't go there because it's not my brand, as it were. I don't have a destination like that of my own on the web, but it wasn't the case at all. People went up and they didn't give a shit. Like Elijah said to me, my oldest son, he said, "Hey, people don't care about that. They just want to know where it is. They might not even know that they're on another website. They see your record on a Bandcamp page. That's it.
Absolutely.
All there is to it." And I think so. I think there is a lot more, and I was considering it before I even finished putting this one together. And I thought really hard about what periods of time were being represented in this one. And the next one I'm not so sure of. I have film scores that I own that are good, that I like, that I have respect for. I would like people to hear. I have a lot of Presence material and there's a lot of Son of Goldfinger material and a lot of Presence material that's still around. And I've got the duet with Will Calhoun. Maybe that's going to be next because it would be definitely a legacy project. It's done.
Has that Sample Cell, was it called Sample Cell record ever been re-released?
You mean the four of them that I did?
Yeah.
Hey, hold that thought. Ready? I just, for no known reason, happen to have all of them sitting here. Not for this, but for another reason. This was the first one.
Yeah.
First of its kind. Never happened before this. It's samples of my loops going up to 3 minutes long, 3-4 minutes long. This was the second one with artwork by Mick Karn. and a sculpture that he tried to give me by Mick Karn. Multi-page. These are multi-page things. Wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. Now what would you pay?
Then there's this.
That's the one I was thinking of, a splatter cell.
This is the smallest and the least. This is the tiniest one of all of them. And then, yeah, that's it. Those were the ones that I made. And
but was Splatter Cell released as a kind of a commercial record at one point? Not just a sample record.
There is a Splatter Cell record.
I think that's what I was thinking of.
Oh, wait, hold on. You're talking about, there were 2 Splatter Cell records. And this was the first one, right?
Yeah, I remember the artwork. I never had it.
I have 2 of them, but I had to buy them. The people who basically ended up ripping me off, they continue. Every once in a while, you can still see them selling them somewhere, even though they're disbarred from being able to sell them. And this was the second one, which was the remixes of the material from the orange one. That included remixes by. Oh, this was really fun to do. There are 2 by me. There's one by Dan the Automator. There's one big one by Charlie Clouser from Nine Inch Nails. There's one by Fernando Aponte, who was Ryuichi Sakamoto's engineer and assistant. There's one by Sakamoto. There's one by me and Tim Bowness from No Man. Tim Bowness, who owns that big distribution, progressive and electronic distribution record network in England. There's one by Gareth Williams from the commercial house Human, amazing New Zealand guy. There's one by Yoshihiro Hano, one of my electronic heroes. There's one by Carter Burwell, the film composer. There's one by Sakamoto. And then there's an original electronic tune that's not on this record that I just put there for bits.
So are you barred from releasing them, re-releasing
I'm not barred from releasing it. I always wanted to put it out with the artwork. And in fact, I had them on Screw Gun years ago, 10, 12, 15 years ago as downloads. I had them on Screw Gun Records, not on Bandcamp. And, they sold like maybe 20 altogether. And I was really, it was in the days of the internet where, well, how do you get people to go there?
Yeah. It's a different era. Although, the other end of the spectrum, since you say you want to put it out with the artwork, would be to put it out as this incredible deluxe double box set with, whatever other goodies and stuff you could throw in, or as vinyl or something with the artwork blown up large or something.
Yeah, vinyl feels like it's not like I think it's a dead end. I'm excited when we do it, but it is it kind of doesn't get to the people, as it were. It's a specialty item. I would think more about, and this is something I've been thinking about, is doing the Bandcamp, but then having somebody do artwork, cut them into the sale of the thing, and do the artwork as they have used to do for the record companies, like Steve Byram or whomever.
Sure.
Any graphic artist or artist, do something special for the cover, and then we'll sell that and mail that out. Just empty piece of paper,
That probably makes even more sense since we were discussing how nobody has CD players anymore anyway.
Yeah, so. No CD in it or anything like that. Or if you felt like, you wanted to be like really, I don't know, just give people a thumb drive. But why would people have thumb drives? Everything's in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep,
I don't.
there's media, the whole media thing, but that's another discussion. Well, as always, it's been fabulous talking to you, and this has all been great stuff, and you look great on the video. So I hope the video works out, and I can just figure out a way to just put it up.
I'm not looking at me. I know people are going to yell at me because they think I cut my hair or something. But
No, you just pushed it back, but the lighting's really good. So we'll see. I'll see about getting it up. I'll let you know. I mean, you'll know when it's up, and if for any reason it doesn't happen, I'll just get it transcribed and put it up as a as a post, normal post. Although I may end up doing both. Some people may not have an hour and a half to sit and watch it and would rather just read it in however long it takes them to read it. So, but I think it's just great. Either way, it's going to be great, and I'm glad I was able to do it.
If you do something on video, I can't share that on my YouTube, right? That just stays on your site.
Yeah, you can share it. I mean, if you had a website, you could embed it in your website.
That I can do.
If I put it up on YouTube, that's how all my YouTube, I mean, all the YouTube on Guitar Moderne is stuff that I find on YouTube and then embed into my site. I may do the YouTube, if I have to put this up on YouTube to embed it, I may do the YouTube thing as a private thing, and I'll figure out a way to get it to you or send you the embed code so you can do it. Because I would really like...
Just put the code on my site.
Yeah, because I would really like this to drive people to Guitar Moderne rather than having them watch it on YouTube. So if they can only watch it on Guitar Moderne, that would be great. So give me a little while to get the technical stuff worked out, but
No problem.
But this is great, and you stay healthy.
You too. You look good too, man. You don't look like you've got any. You look a little pale, actually, but that could be. Now you look darker for a second.
Well, pale is good, Sunscreen 30 all the time,
Oh man.
All right, David. Take care. We'll talk soon.
All right, dude. Thanks.
Bye-bye.